And hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Saturday. It's another story time night, and we continue our quest into Gifted. Gifted, of course, is the debut author of D.W. Lewis, an indie author of, I want to say, Welsh background, living in Singapore. That's a move, huh? Married, living over there, author, editor, D.W. Lewis. And we've been diving into Gifted, where we have Cal. Cal is our main protagonist in this book. Orphan, hollowborn. But he's also acquired himself a new moniker, Chainbreaker. We saw early on in the story that Cal was able to use a sword to break an unbreakable, so people thought, chain. And so he has gained the moniker Chainbreaker to some. His original city of origin got destroyed in the explosion of a volcano caused by him breaking the chain. And he lost the girl he grew up with, even though they've never said it. You figure the love of his life, Ovette. He believes, of course, saving her is, of course, what caused him to attack and break the chain. And he believes that she has perished in that volcano explosion. We have seen her after the fact. She believes that Cal died in that explosion. Cal is a hollowborn, unable to channel the gift. Ovette is a next level of gift user known as a Gyfted, thus the name of the book. Much more powerful than a normal gift user. And Cal has now been working with the rebellion, I want to say in Undis. I could be saying the name wrong. Forgive me. I've read another book a couple of times since I last read it. But Cal is now working with the rebellion. They don't like him much. He doesn't like them much. But they work together. And Cal and hey, Alos, good evening to you. Cal and the rebellion are working to disrupt the Davins. And what they are doing, well, a new weapon has been discovered. The weapon is basically like a gun used by gift users. They have to channel their gift into it. It fires a projectile. The rebellion needs to get their hands on these. In order to get their hands on these, they need to work with a somewhat unsavory individual to be able to get them. His name is Dredge. Dredge's ask in return for a crate of the weapons is to meet the Chainbreaker. So, in order to be able to go and successfully meet with the Chainbreaker, Jord, a childhood antagonist of Cal's who has become a friend and confidant, says that they need Quentin. Quentin has dealt with Dredge before. However, Quentin's rebellion cell has gone silent. So they went to check it out, find that the majority of his rebellion cell has been slaughtered, but they do not find Quentin's body. George says he knows where he would have gone. They go to the warehouse where he would have been, and they see that there are guards around it. Prefects? I want to say prefects. Cal sends Shay and Jord in the back and goes to deal with the prefects. He kills the three out front, goes inside, fights and kills three more. Cal, of course, is a Hollowborn, has no use of magic. All the rest of these people have use of the gift. So they can throw fire, they can do things like that. But Cal is the man. So that is where we are with a lot of this. And they get in there, they save Quentin, and Quentin is going to take them to meet Dredge. That is where we are going to pick up our story for this evening. As always, if you have missed any of them, youtube.com/@SirArminius. All of the prior chapters are there for your listening pleasure. You don't actually have to watch the videos, you can just listen to them. I mean, you are welcome to stare at my lovely face if you want. The face for radio, the voice for print. You are welcome to watch them, but if not, put it on somewhere, set it down, and do your thing and just listen on in. We'll be starting tonight into chapter 14. So the prologue, previous 13 chapters, and an interlude, all available on the YouTube channel for your listening enjoyment. Tonight's chapters, of course, will all be recorded as well, and I will put them up on the channel tonight after our live stream. So if you miss anything, you're not able to join for a week, you're not able to join for one of the 2 sessions of the week, not a problem. I put them all out there for you. Just make sure you take the opportunity to like, follow, subscribe, do all that on the YouTube channel for me, would you? Help me to continue to grow that so that way I can help and support more indie authors. And now, let's go ahead and dive in to our next reading session, where we are going to be reading Gyfted by D.W. Lewis. Starting in 14. Cal held onto his arm, the chain scars throbbing beneath the bandages. The raw skin itched, and the sewer's damp air clung to him. Thick, stagnant, the stench wrapping around him like a second skin. He flexed his fingers, but the ache dug in deeper, stubborn. Every so often, the wound flared up, sharp enough to make thinking of anything else difficult. Another spike of pain lanced through his arm, and Cal bit back a grunt. "How bad is it?" Shay asked. He hadn't even noticed she'd been waiting for him. Up ahead, Jord and Quentin engaged in an animated conversation, their voices bouncing off the slimy tunnel walls. "It's fine," Cal lied, his face scrunched and teeth clenched. Shay reached for his arm. "Let me see." He jerked away. "No, nothing to be done. Just need to ride it out." Shay sighed, the kind of sigh born of experience. Cal knew she meant well, but holding his arm and rubbing it wouldn't make the pain go away. Wouldn't heal a wound that persisted despite her and Artie's best attempts. "What about that coin pouch you carry with you?" Cal shot her a glare. "What are you talking about?" "Come on, Cal. I've seen you holding it. You're not as secretive as you think," Shay replied. ignoring Cal's warning signs. It helps, doesn't it? Cal's hand twitched toward the small pouch of rough cloth against his chest, noticing its weight as it hung around his neck. He suddenly felt very exposed, laid bare before Shay, a feeling he didn't relish. I don't need it, he muttered, turning away. Shay watched him for a beat. Sure, Cal. Whatever you say. She took a step, then paused, looking back at Cal. It belonged to her, didn't it? Cal gathered himself and walked past her, eyes fixed ahead, jaw still clenched. Behind him, Shay whispered, Thought so. Music floated through the dank corridors of the underground waterway, sounds of revelry and laughter, out of place in the gloom. We're here, Quentin announced, stepping through a stone archway and out into yet another grand open chamber. Ahead sprawled an expansive underground city. Squat stone buildings, no taller than a story or two, were squashed side by side, their stonework etched with the same markings as the rebellion's hideout. Streets crisscrossed between them, teeming with people. Compared to Undas's districts, this area was minuscule, but that didn't stop it from being alive with activity. How had this stayed hidden? Cal counted 12 ways out before they passed the first building. 6 alleys, 3 stairwells, 2 storm drains. Torchlight pooled in the slick, cobbled streets. Not the golden glow of honest hearts, but the greedy shimmer of coin changing hands in dark alleys. Quentin had called it a sanctuary. But to Cal, it looked and smelled like a trap that hadn't been sprung yet. Mind your purses, Quentin muttered, as a pack of small children darted past, giggling at one another. They wore rags stitched into clothes, but the sound, that sound, hit Cal like a gut punch. He forced his face still. How is this possible? Shay breathed, spinning to take in the stalls. Merchants in vibrant clothing waved handfuls of spice under their noses. Cal's nose tickled. The air prickled like the threat of a sneeze. Quentin smirked. Of all people, Miss Shay, I thought you would recognize the gift at work. Do you not possess similar abilities of illusion and perception? Not on this scale, Shay shot back, still scanning the market stalls. I can hide or change the appearance of maybe 1 or 2 people at a time, but even that can be taxing. Well, a man in Dredge's position requires his operations to be conducted with a certain level of discretion. I believe he has several of your giftkin in his employ, all of whom work tirelessly to keep this little paradise discreet. He spread his arms, reveling in the scene. Cal scowled. We found it easy enough. No, my boy, we were invited. Quentin winked. He directed Cal's attention to the rooftops. On either side, shadows moved, hooded figures tracking their progress. Best behavior, chain breaker. Cal and the others pressed on toward a fortress-like structure. Layers upon layers of water-beaten stone interlaced with thick, bloated wooden beams. Arrow slits peppered the walls. Cal's neck prickled under imagined stairs. The scale and solidity of the fortress exuded an aura of dominance, a silent testament to its current owner. A lone thug stood between them and the entrance to this stone symbol of defiance. 2 torches ensconced on the sides of flanked gatehouses behind him. The torchlight cast dancing shadows on the ground below, bathing the thug in a shifting veil, enhancing the grimness of his features. He leaned his substantial weight onto a wooden spear he held upright in his hand and watched as the group approached, casting an intelligent eye, one that belied his outward appearance, over each of them. "Good sir," Quentin said with a low and gracious bow, "I believe we are expected." "Nope," the thug replied. The muscles in his arms twitched. Quentin cleared his throat, his posture stiffening. "We are here at Dredge's request. I suggest you move aside." "Nope." The spear's wood groaned as his grip tightened. "My man, I assure you I have been instructed to remove any undesirables from the vicinity of Lord Dredge's hideout in any way I see fit. Consider yourself warned." Quentin balked. Cal took a slight step forward, only to feel Shay's nails bite into his elbow. Quentin adjusted his collared jacket, cleared his throat again, and stepped forward. "Would you count the chain-breaker undesirable?" The thug slowly dipped his head, raised his brow, and lifted the tip of his spear to Quentin's throat. "You?" Quentin shook his head and then gestured toward Cal. The thug scanned him from head to toe, then bellowed with laughter. The sound ricocheted off the walls. "This runt!" he jeered, jabbing the spear in Cal's direction. Cal moved forward again, but Shay dug her fingers in deeper. "You gotta be shitting me!" The thug continued to laugh, his breath reeking of onions and bad decisions. In that moment, Cal understood three things. The spear's tip was dull, but its rusted edge would leave behind a nasty infection. The man's left knee bowed inward from some old break, and this would likely end with someone's teeth in the sewer muck. The only question was whose. Quentin sighed. Yes, it's all very entertaining. Now, are you going to let us pass or not?" Still wheezing, the thug gestured to another at the top of the gatehouse. Chains clanked, and a few seconds later, the wrought iron gate juddered open. "Wise choice, my friend, wise choice," Quentin purred, strutting past. Cal kept his gaze trained on the thug as they moved through. Shay's grip stayed vice-tight around his arm. Cal hated the moniker the people had given him, but he hated this thug's kind even more. Bullies who believed their size made them invincible. The merriment Cal had heard outside the fortress walls washed over him, its courtyard roaring with life. People jigged and swayed to bawdy tunes, tankards clashing, ale sloshing onto scarred wooden tables. It was a tavern writ large, a long bar stacked with barrels, a pot-bellied man strolling its length, bantering with the patrons slouched across the wood. No one spared Cal's group a glance as they wove through the crowd. Too drunk, too loud, too careless. Cal's eyes swept the room. No guards, no thugs, no weapons. Just drunks and the hollow-born servants weaving between them, invisible as ghosts. His jaw tightened. Movement flickered at the edges of his vision, shadows darting along the torch-lit walls. Fast, deliberate. They were being watched. At the far end of the courtyard, raised on a platform, a long table presided over the revelry. Behind it sat a man draped in finery that put George to shame. He sat in an overly ornate chair, his head lolling against a gloved hand, the other angling an empty wine glass. A giant of a woman, arms like knotted ship ropes, refilled it, then tossed the jug over her shoulder with a crash. She then turned her grip to a warhammer, leaning against the table, fixing Cal with a piercing gaze. Quentin sauntered forward, arms open high and wide. Dredge, I. Dredge's glare cut him off mid-word. When he stood, slow and deliberate, the torchlight shied away from him. When he circled the table, even the drunkard's laughter died in their throats. He stopped before Cal, smelling of citrus and camphor, the scents layered over something darker. Up close, his gloves were too perfect, his boots too polished. The meticulous vanity of a man who pays others to kneel with scrubbing brushes. So, he said, letting the word hang in the air like a dagger bounce on its point. You're the man everyone's talking about. Cal didn't respond. Silence swallowed the courtyard. Tankards clunked onto tables. Music and revelry died. Only the creak of hidden crossbows and the giantess's heavy breathing remained. Drudge smirked. You don't have to say anything. Your eyes do it for you. He leaned in, perfume cloying. Fierce and dangerous. You have the eyes of a man who's willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. The eyes of a killer. He circled Cal like a butcher sizing up meat. Am I to call you Chain Breaker? Or do you have a real name, boy? Cal held his tongue, determined to make this scap work for every piece of information. Nothing would be free. Dredge stomped in front of Cal, his body still facing the direction he'd been circling. His whisper slithered into Cal's ear. Where I come from, it's good manners to offer your name when asked. But I suppose an orphan like you wouldn't know anything about manners, would you, Cal? Cal's blood froze. His nostrils flared, lips parted in a slight snarl. Not the best first impression, Dredge sighed, stepping back. We were told you have supplies for us, Shay's voice cut in. Dredge's gaze shot toward her. Ah, the daughter of the infamous rebel Barkis. Tell me, what is it like to grow up in the shadow of a legend? Exactly how much does it take to make Daddy proud? Shay stood her ground, unflinching. It can be annoying, especially when upstart little men think they can use that knowledge against me. Dredge barked a laugh and stepped back from Cal, leaning himself against the table once again. You really are your father's daughter, even down to that veneer of importance. He took a long swig from his wineglass and set it back down with a thunk. But let me give you a free piece of advice. Don't get lost in your little illusions, lest you forget how dangerous reality can really be. Hidden crossbows clicked in unison. Cal's fingers twitched toward his blades as he brought his gaze back down to Dredge. Glare at me all you want, boy. You're in my domain. Here, I am untouchable. Dredge clicked his fingers, and a single crossbow bolt cracked into the ground at Cal's feet. You do well to remember that. Another crossbow latch clicked in the shadows above. You didn't invite us here just to threaten us. Jord eyed the crossbow bolt as he stepped toward Dredge. Men like you don't waste arrows on warnings. We know you want something from us. Neither your advice nor your aid comes for free. Dredge threw his head back and cackled, a noisy, crackling sound that echoed through the cavern. Bravo! He pushed himself off the table and sauntered back to his seat. I expected nothing less from the scion of House Tull. George shifted on the spot. Oh, yes, I know who you are, too. Last surviving son of Jaren Tull, the merchant prince of Undis. Daddy's little rebel. He'd be so proud to see the man you've become. Let's pray your end is less messy. He drew back, tutting. Such a pity. Are you going to help us or not? Cal growled. Darla. Dredge turned to the giantess. Looks like the dog can speak after all. Who'd have thought? Not me. Darla grunted back in a voice cracked and rough. Don't like the way the little wannabe's eyeing ya, boss. She rumbled, hefting her warhammer. Now, Darla, play nice. Dredge smirked. To answer your question, Chainbreaker, yes, I am going to help you. That is, after you've helped me. Help you how? Cal replied, his gaze fixed on Darla's deep, menacing scowl. There is a certain individual who has entrenched himself within the upper echelons of the Daven court. A misguided individual who, so far, has remained immune to my persuasive charms. Shocker, Cal scoffed. Dredge ignored the comment, instead cleaning his fingernail as if such talk bored him. I want this individual removed. I need to send a message that refusing my cooperation can lead to particularly nasty results. You want us to kill him? Cal asked. Dredge chuckled in response. So ready to dole out death, this one. Have you ever seen anything like him, Darla? All fire and spit. He doesn't look like much to me, Darla continued, her scowl daring Cal to make the first move. Wouldn't take much to put this mutt down. Dredge looked between Darla and Cal. Now, that is a fight I would pay to see. Darla took a step forward. Cal did the same, one hand reaching for the hilt of the jagged blade. Jord threw his arm out in front of Cal and shook his head, slightly. We didn't come here to add to your problems, Dredge. Lord Dredge, if you please, Dredge replied with venomous mirth. Of course, Lord Dredge, Jord replied. We came here seeking your aid, and you have provided us with an avenue for such. However, I do find something odd. Jord hesitated before continuing. Go on, Dredge said, still smirking. Assassinating this Uden official seems unwise. Any attempt on his life, whether successful or not, could potentially be traced back to you. Therefore, I can only surmise that you wish for him to be removed in some other way. A way that falls in line with the political games the upper elite are known to play. And what way would that be, Lord Tull? Dredge asked. You say this official has refused to cooperate with you. A man who already stands out amongst his peers. It is a well-known fact that the elite often parley with the more criminal elements of the city. A man of such moral standing likely has enemies within the court. Enemies who'd like nothing more than for him to disappear. If we cannot kill the man, then we kill his reputation. Subterfuge. Dredge's clapping echoed throughout the chamber. He pulled out several worn pieces of paper from inside his jacket and placed them on the table. Jord picked them up, scanning each before tossing them back to Shay. Evidence tying the official to the rebellion? Dredge's smile deepened. If we do this, you'll give the rebellion the supplies they need. The weapons? Oh, I offer something far more valuable than that. What? Cal snarled. Dredge was playing them. He knew it. Dredge knew it. Like it or not, Dredge had them right where he wanted them. My silence, Dredge purred, his gaze passing over each of them. Letting his words sink in, he turned to Darla. What was the current bounty on the chain breaker again? Darla's lips curled into a smile. Lots, she scoffed. Dredge turned back to the group. Imagine what I could do with lots. I've got another way of keeping you silent, Cal growled, his hands going for his hilts once again. Try it, Darla snapped, slamming the head of her warhammer on the ground, readying herself for a swing. Shay pulled on Cal's hand, and Jord put his hand against his chest. Do this for me, Dredge said, cutting through the palpable tension. And I promise on my honor that neither the prefects nor the inquisitors will hear about your little hidey hole in the sewers. We accept, Jord said, crestfallen. Dredge beamed. Excellent. He jumped out of his seat and clapped his hands together, the gesture quickly followed by the sound of crossbows uncocking. Now, time is of the essence. Our mutual friend owns an estate in the inner ring of the city, but access to it will be tricky. Two of his assistants regularly visit the outer rings, passing handouts to the less fortunate among us. I hear our official friend is quite the benevolent benefactor. Charities, hospices, shelters for the downtrodden. Holdings in all the major cities of Eudos, in fact. He shot Cal a look, then refocused his attention on Jord. Tail his lackeys. Learn what you can. Steal what you can. But remember, no killing. Questions? No one replied. No? Good. Oh, and let's pretend I made all the relevant threats about the consequences of betraying me. He added, gesturing to the top of the courtyard wall. Torches flared along the upper walls, bathing the gruesome sight of people bolted to wooden crucifixes. Blood seeped from multiple wounds. Thick, iron-mottled collars closed around their throats, the metallic pins pulsing with a sickly glow. Of course, that collar won't be of much use on you, Chainbreaker. Dredge sighed. But I'm creative. The courtyard fell silent again, the scene above too horrific to put into words. Come on, Cal, let's go, George said eventually, pushing Cal's chest. Cal stared at the crucified victims, his blood boiling as the collar pins glowed. He brought his gaze back down and settled it on Dredge, promising himself that he'd come back here after everything was finished. After the deal was done, come back and make permanent Dredge's silence. The last dregs of the afternoon sunlight seeped through the crack as Cal pushed open the sewer hatch. He scanned the quad, looking for anything out of place. Quentin had assured them all this particular sewer's exit would place them a few storehouses away from Jord's. The quad was abuzz with its usual happenings. Workers carrying wooden boxes containing gift knows what to and fro. The sounds of an energized argument in the distance, discussing shipping levies and the like. Everything was business as usual. We're clear, Cal called down to the others as he hoisted himself out of the sewer hole. Quentin's voice floated up smug. You see, you should be more trusting, Cal. Cal ignored the comment. He didn't have the patience for it right now. The meeting with Dredge bothered him more. That man was far more dangerous than any of them had realized. If he already knew the location of the rebellion's hideout, then others might as well. He told himself he didn't care about most of the people here, but Artie was still there. Plus, Shay would be devastated if something happened to her father. The rebellion was all she had left. The thought twisted his gut. Are we really doing this? Framing some innocent man? Shay asked, her voice filled with trepidation as she climbed out. Jord brushed dirt up from his sleeves. We have little choice in the matter. The Resistance needs the weapons Dredge can offer. Without them, I don't see us surviving much longer, outmatched as we are. And Dredge knows about the hideout, Cal added. He's better informed than you realized. Indeed, I hate to say it, but his silence is the more valuable commodity at this point. I know all that. It just feels wrong, Shay said. Cal agreed. The prefects and the Davins deserved what was coming to them. Their hands were just as bloody as Cal's. But this Uden official? He was innocent. If anything, he was helping the downtrodden and the needy more than Cal was. We don't have a choice, Shay, he said, forcing his tone softer. We do what we need to survive. I don't like this either. Her gaze held his. Complicated, as always. Cal is right, George said. We have no time for compunction. We do the job, get the weapons, and wash our hands of Dredge entirely. Couldn't have put it better myself, Quentin chimed in. Might I suggest we split the party, as it were? After all, we have two targets to track, and this will be an awful lot faster if we were to split into two teams. Agreed. Shay and I will stay in the swell. It should be easy enough to spot our target among the workers there. Quentin, you go with Cal to the tideway and look for anyone offering aid to the helpless. Quentin dipped into a performative bow. Of course, my liege. George smirked. After you're done, meet us at the gate to the inner ring. Hopefully we'll find whatever we need to enter the official's estate. If not, Cal, Shay, I'll be relying on you to get us in. Cal and Shay both nodded in response. I know this doesn't feel good. We're taking from the very people we're trying to liberate, but desperate times call for desperate measures. No one replied. The facts were too uncomfortable to think about. Even Quentin's expression appeared more solemn than it had been a few moments before. Good luck, everyone, George said, looking at each of them individually, stopping on Cal. Cal, a word? He gestured to the side and took Cal by the arm, leading him a few steps away from the others. George's voice lowered as he leaned in close. I know you don't like Quentin. I know he can be difficult to stomach. Cal raised his eyebrow in response. I know, but... George looked back, his voice barely above a whisper. He's still injured. Look after him. He squeezed Cal's arm. Please, Cal. Cal read the exasperation in his friend's eyes and then gave a curt nod. George exhaled, relieved. Thank you. He returned to Quentin, giving him a quick kiss before saying his own farewells. Shay offered Cal a faint smile before turning to follow behind George. Cal sighed and made his way over to a beaming Quentin, not relishing the realization that it was going to be a long day. Chapter 14 complete. Hello, everyone. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. How are you guys enjoying it so far? Hopefully, enjoying it well. Yes? No? All right. Well, how about we just continue on, shall we? We will listen in on our lovely stream here as we continue Gifted. Make sure everything is working. All my stuff looks like it's working. Fantastic. All right. Here we go, everyone. Diving into 15. There, that's her. It must be, Quentin said, his arm draped over a crouched Cal. He pointed to a woman dressed in simple yet elegant clothing, a long blue cloak trimmed with embroidery that no dock worker could afford. When's the last time you saw a docker with nails that clean? Cal shrugged him off. That's what you said about the last two people we followed. Your lack of faith wounds me, dear boy. You haven't exactly been pulling your weight. I led you to dredge, did I not? Led us into a viper's nest, more like. Cal held up his hand, shushing Quentin's response, and tried to listen on the conversation ahead. The assistant they'd been following had stopped off in several different locations, each time offering a few coins or simply listening to the woes of the downtrodden. Odd to see someone genuinely helping others and asking for nothing in return. The beauty of Eunice was plain to see. Its tall white buildings, manors and governmental buildings alike, shone in the inner ring of the city. Even those that sat on the outer rings were nicer than most of the buildings Cal had been to in Igni. Hand-painted murals spread across the walls. Colorful banners ran between the many planted trees that littered the streets. On the surface, Eunice was a jewel. That beauty didn't fool Cal. Just like any other city, Eunice had its secrets. The elite here cared only for themselves. In Igni, the Stokes had served as the central market, a place where people from across the city would gather to ogle at the wares being hawked by the many merchants. Chaotic as it had been, the Stokes had a sense of community, one that bled into the rest of the city. But here in Eunice, things were different. There was no central market. There was no intermingling of the classes. The rich stayed in their manors and palaces, feasting, while hollow-born servants scrubbed their floors. What would Leif think of him if he could see him now? He knew the kind of person Cal had to become, what he'd done to survive. Seems our lady friend has arrived at her next destination. Look. Quentin pointed ahead to the assistant. Sure enough, she had stopped on the entry steps to a large three-story building. Children, emaciated and wearing dirty rags, sat around the steps. All were looking up and giggling at the sight of the assistant, as if the sight of her was something to celebrate. An older-looking teenager opened the door, immediately shooing away the noisy children, causing a few of them to poke out their tongues in response. Is she in? The assistant asked. I'm here to deliver Lord Udican's donation. Of course, the teenager replied, his face lit with joy. I'll tell her right away. The assistant giggled as the teenager ran back inside and then turned her attention to the children, who had gathered on the steps behind her. Did you bring any? One of them bleated, followed quickly by a chorus of imitation. The children yipped with glee as the assistant pulled several large sweet pastries from her satchel. Frosting soon smeared gap-toothed grins as these littles devoured the treats. It seems our official is a shrewd man indeed. Some people aren't decent, Cal bit back. Come on, Cal. When was the last time you saw anybody do anything without expecting something in return? The name burned Cal's tongue. Leif, the embodiment of kindness. What would he think of Cal now, were he to see him? And what he'd done to survive? What he'd become? I didn't think so, Quentin purred after a silence. This is a clear example of someone playing the long game. Charity to the outside observer, but to the trained eye, a future proofing tactic. Feed the poor and the needy when they're young, and you can guarantee future support. Calculating indeed. You don't know that. He could actually care. Quentin placed his hand over on his heart, his expression shifting to pantomimic sympathy. Oh, to be so young and naive. No, Cal, there are no nice people in the world. There are only those who use and those who are used. A young woman emerged from the building before Cal could speak. Her waist-long brown hair, tucked behind her ears, framed a face half lost to burns. Milky clouds covered her left eye, the iris obscured by her eyelid stuck halfway closed. But her right eye, brown and retaining a kindness apparent even from afar, locked onto the assistant with startling warmth. Cal's heart jumped into his throat as he stared at the girl. She took the assistant's hand in her own, the skin mottled by long-healed burn scars and bearing no brand. Memories flooded his thoughts. A young girl terrified of becoming a hollowborn like him. Of that same young girl beating the chest of a prefect as he dragged her away from her home. Now here she stood, saving others. Cal breathed hard and whispered, Prissa. It's so good to see you again, Prissa said with a softness that belied the trauma she had endured. I'm eternally grateful for Lord Udican's help. He's been so good to us here. It's to you he extends his gratitude. The things you've done here, for one so young, even after the... The assistant stopped herself and turned her gaze downward as if shamed by the thought. Lord Udican wishes to extend his apologies. He regrets that his support for your kind must remain discreet. Prissa's smile wavered. She breathed deep, composed herself. That's quite all right. I know what I am. What they could become. Prissa gestured to the children around them. Lord Udican works hard to improve the lives of all Udins and Yundis, and beyond, Hollowborn and Giftling alike. Please, let him know that I shall be along as soon as I can break away from my duties here. As gracious as ever, the assistant said, smiling back. You still have the key to the back door? She added, looking sheepish again. Prissa nodded. Safe in my office. Very good, the assistant replied, giving Prissa one final hug before bidding her and the children farewell. Prissa crouched down to the children, poking and prodding some of the younger ones playfully. Miss Prissa, one of the older-looking children chimed. What's a hollowborn? Prissa placed her hand on her chest and chuckled. A person who can't feel the gift around them. I can't feel anything, another one of the children peeped. Does that mean I'm one? Prissa comforted the children, reassuring them that Hollowborns are people just like anyone else. Cal's heart sank as she led the children back inside. Quentin scoffed beside him. This Lord Udican has those orphans wrapped around his little finger. Such a waste. Don't you think so? That girl would be pretty, if not for those hideous scars. Cal gritted his teeth, his fingernails digging into his palms. But at least we know we're onto something, eh, Cal? Quentin continued, oblivious to Cal's feelings. Cal stood and turned toward Quentin, breathing deeply through his nose, resisting the urge to draw his blade. I'm not so sure I'll be of much help in there, my boy, Quentin continued, but perhaps I can cause some sort of distraction out here. You slip in, grab the key. Do it, Cal spat. He needed Quentin gone before the tremor in his hands became visible. The orphanage wall yielded to Cal's practiced climb. Within seconds, Cal reached the window in question, and he clambered in as silently as possible. Several beds lined the sides of the room, each occupied by a tiny, snoring mound. Cal ghosted past, tensing every time a floorboard creaked under his weight. He turned the handle on the bedroom door as silently as he could and made his way into the corridor. Cal braced himself against the wall, dipping into the shadows as footsteps plodded up a nearby staircase. He watched, frozen in place, as Prissa climbed the steps to the upper floors, humming to herself. The lack of light fixtures on the walls made creeping through the corridors easy enough, but Cal didn't dare get too close. He feared Prissa would somehow sense his presence, sense his guilt. A huge part of him wanted her to turn around and look at him, to catch him in the act. Cal's lips parted, and more than once he had to catch himself before calling out to her. Eventually, Prissa entered another room. A placard next to the door read, Headmaster's Office. Cal braced himself on the side of the door and tried to think of a way he could get inside without being seen. The more he thought about it, the more he realized the only way to get that done with Prissa in the room was to knock her unconscious. Getting in and incapacitating her before she had the chance to turn around would be easy enough. But the more he considered it, the worse he felt. Again, he reminded himself that he had a job to do, and that right now, Prissa was in the way of him completing that mission. No key meant no deal with Dredge. No deal with Dredge meant no weapons for the rebellion. And without those weapons, Cal's goal of getting to the Lord Inquisitor would be nigh on impossible. Even he had to accept that. Despite all this, Cal couldn't move. His legs were frozen in place. He noticed how loud he was breathing, the beads of sweat that ran down the side of his face. He had to get in that room. But he couldn't. Prissa wasn't a prefect. She wasn't a Daven. She was Prissa. He couldn't do it. His heart leaped into his throat as the door to the office swung open. On reflex, he dipped into the shadows, pressing himself as hard as he could against the wall without making a sound. His whole body tensed as Prissa walked past him, heading back down the stairs. He waited as the soft thump of her feet drew farther and farther away. Letting out a long sigh, Cal pushed himself off the wall and made his way into Prissa's office. Its layout was simple, unassuming. Messy stacks of paper and open folders adorned a central desk, a set of insect-eaten chairs placed around it. A simple bed, with neatly tucked-in corners, occupied the corner closest to the door. Large wooden beams ran overhead, reaching from the door side of the room to an enormous circular window. Years of muck and grime build up, making the glass opaque. No shelves or bookcases within the room offered additional storage. For a headmaster's office, it was bare. either a testament to the lack of use or the lack of funding. Cal passed a glance over the missives and papers strewn across the top of the desk, handwritten documents on the different children that lived here, each with their name and various other specifics. Cal found them difficult to look at. The room already reminded him of Leif's old office. The layout was entirely different, but the sparseness was the same. The obvious dedication, the same. He turned his attention to the drawers and searched through the ones that were unlocked. Inside, he found a few crumpled letters. One in particular stood out to him. It was from someone named Lord Dreeroyne. Its contents promised Prissa unlimited funding if she would cooperate in spying on Lord Udican. Guilt rippled through Cal as he wondered just how much trouble Prissa was in with Eunice's elite. Several other crumpled letters from the same Lord Dreeroyne repeated the same request, each less flattering than the last. The last drawer held firm as Cal pulled on it. Locked in place. Cal had no choice. He drew his dagger, braced it between the drawer's lock and the desk's wooden frame, and broke the lock with a satisfying pop. Leaving a trail wasn't exactly ideal, but as long as no one saw him, then tracing it back to him or the rebellion would be impossible. Besides, sooner or later Eunice's elite would know of this deception, and if they were anything like Cal expected them to be, they'd just point blame at one another, whilst secretly relishing the fact that Lord Udican was no longer around. Inside sat an ornate key with a simple note attached. The note read, "My dearest Prissa, I work for the day when all Udens, be they hollowborn or giftling, are treated as equals and the need for our secret has passed. But until that day comes, please take this and know that my door and my heart are always open to you." Cal swallowed against the growing lump in his throat as he put the note back and pocketed the estate key. He closed the drawer as best he could and crept toward the door. Panic fueled Cal's movements as the doorknob began to turn. He leaped onto the desk and vaulted onto the ceiling beam, pushing himself low and into the shadows once again. His heart pounded as Prissa entered the room, looking back and calling out to someone. "I'll be right there. I just need something from my desk," she said. Cal watched her from above, stayed as still as possible, begging her not to look up. The situation was almost funny. Cal had fought prefects and brawled with inquisitors. He'd been outnumbered by his opponents more times than he cared to remember. But the thought of Prissa seeing him as he was, it terrified him. Prissa crossed the room and slumped into her chair. She threw down the papers in her hands and thumbed her temples. Stamped red lettering covered the front of the topmost discarded paper. Notice of relocation. Making out the writing underneath the dominant red stamp was difficult from where he was positioned, but it seemed the prefects were aware of Prissa's orphanage. It wasn't uncommon for prefects to declare buildings havens for the rebellion and have them seized. But why an orphanage? Did this have something to do with Lord Udican's enemies in court? Prissa sighed, a deep, aging sigh that made her sound older. "I wonder if Leif ever had to deal with this." A knock on the door drew her and Cal's attention. An older woman entered, likely another volunteer. Cal thought, "Sorry to disturb you, Prissa." Prissa made a clear effort to recompose herself. "No, it's fine. What's the matter?" "Well, there's a strange man at the door. He says he's lost, so we gave him directions. Only now he won't leave. He seems harmless enough. A little odd, maybe. What should we do?" "Bring him inside and offer him something to eat and drink if we can spare it. I'll speak with him." The woman nodded in response and closed the door as she left. With one last quick sigh, Prissa took the papers from her desk and reached for the drawers. She paused, her scarred fingers tracing the broken lock. "Hello? Is someone there?" she asked. There was no hint of fear in her voice. "It's all right. You don't have to hide. I won't call the prefects. I promise." Instead, her voice carried a softness to it, a sincerity. Cal didn't move. He stared down at Prissa, silent and listening. "I know must be hard. Believe me, I've been there. But it's okay. You don't have to steal to survive. If you let me, I can help you." Cal dug his fingers into the wooden beam. "Please, let me help you." Her words, her kindness, were a dagger in his chest. Prissa waited for a response, her hands clutched against her chest. After a few moments of waiting and searching, her shoulders slumped, and her hands dropped to her sides. "Okay, I get it. You're scared. Surviving is all you know." The edges of Cal's vision began to blur. "Here," Prissa continued. She unlatched the large circular window and pushed it open. A stiff breeze rushed into the room, the smell of sea salt filling the space. "You can get out through here. That way you can stay hidden, and you won't scare the children." She moved to the front of her desk, reached into a pocket of her dress, and separated a small bundle of coins from the donation Lord Utican's assistant had given her earlier. "Sorry it's not much. We don't have a lot to spare, but it should be enough to get you something to eat tonight." Cal's body felt limp. His muscles shook. The beam underneath him creaked as he shifted his weight. Prissa spun on the spot, her hands still reaching for the doorknob. She took a tentative step back into the room, and Cal shifted back on the beam. "All right, I'm sorry," she said, stopping in her tracks. "I won't come any closer." She turned and opened the door, pausing before looking back. "Next time, please come through the front. I'd really like to meet you." With one last smile, she exited the room, the door latch clicking shut behind her. Cal dropped down, knees hitting hardwood, the key gripped in his hand. After what seemed like forever, he picked himself up and walked over to the open window, readying himself to climb out. Braced against the window's frame, he turned back and stared at the meager pile of coins Prissa had left on the desk, his breathing coming fast and shallow. How could she have shown him such kindness? Someone she knew was stealing from her? After everything that had happened, after everything she had lost, she had chosen kindness. Cal seethed as he drove his fist into the window frame, the impact sending a jolt up his arm. Getting his breathing back under control, Cal walked to Prissa's desk and pulled out the coin pouch from around his neck. He opened it and stared at the scratched, faded coins that Ovette had collected over the years. He remembered how happy she had been every time she added another coin to her collection. The savings, she'd called it. Cal had asked her what she was saving for. She'd always shrugged her shoulders and answered, "For something special." Cal closed his eyes, squeezing out the last vestige of any real emotion he'd felt in so long. For a moment, he wished for easier times, to be back in the hideout with Ovette. He tipped the contents of the coin pouch onto the table, adding Ovette's savings to Prissa's pile. He whispered, "I'm sorry," and made his way out of the window. Cal sat with his head in his hands, the dark alleyway shrouding him in shadow, helping him disappear from the world. Boots clacked on the cobblestone, and Quentin rounded a corner, looking pleased with himself. Ah, Cal, there you are. Quentin smirked. Were you successful? Cal held up the ornate key he'd taken from Prissa's desk. So simple an object, and yet the sight of it churned his stomach. He flung the key at Quentin, fingers still shaking. Excellent. Quentin pocketed the key and turned back to look at the orphanage, hands on his hips. It's a shame, really. Framing this Lord Utican will likely mean the end of places like this. The prefects of Eunice do not treat captured rebels kindly. Cal tried to ignore him, tried to focus on the damp cobblestones beneath him, and the distant murmur of the city. Anything but Prissa's face. The scared little girl, grown into a confident and headstrong woman, kind and pure despite everything. Leif would have been proud of her. Cal was. Oh well, the mission must come first, right? Quentin clapped Cal's shoulder, snapping him out of his stupor. We should go. Cal's voice wavered. He swallowed hard. I. I don't. He stopped himself, shook his head and balled his fists, shook the image of his old life from his mind. It was a distraction, nothing more. Not useful, not helpful. He stood and purposefully strode away from the orphanage. We need to meet the others. Come on. He dared not look back. Couldn't. He wasn't that person anymore. He didn't deserve to be. He was a thief, a rebel, a killer. And killers didn't look back. Hello, Genitox. If you are still here, welcome on in. I know. How dare they spell gifted wrong? I'm going to be honest. I like the spelling of it. I mean, I think it works really well with what we've got here. Um, but the funny part about it is that um, when you try to search for this on Amazon, it is the biggest pain in the butt to find it because it's spelled Gyfted. And Amazon keeps on trying to correct it. You'll spell gifted and it'll be like gifted, Gifted, and it'll pull up stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Give me the right thing. Which is why on all the descriptions on the YouTube channel, I have the link to the book. Free on Kindle Unlimited. Or you can buy it Amazon Prime or on Amazon. You know you want to support the author. Hope you guys are enjoying the book. I really have been. And of course, if you guys have missed any of it, I do record all of these chapters as we go through, which you can pick up on youtube.com/at Sir Arminius. Because what could be better than picking up and enjoying a wonderful book? I am going to take a very brief break, everybody. Go take a quick bio break, and then I will be right back. And I just realized that my "Be Right Back" thing doesn't say "Be Right Back" on it. I don't know how I, messed that up. I'll have to fix it. Alright, are you guys ready for us to dive into the next chapter? You know you are. You know you want to. Where else would you rather be than right here? Reading with me in 16. Quentin yawned, propped up against the wall. Hours had passed since they'd reached the upper ring. Sunlight crept over the horizon, casting the lavish buildings in orange. Everything on the inner ring, from the filigreed gold that cornered each building to the immaculate whiteness of the limestone streets, left a bitter tang in Cal's mouth. He imagined the painstaking effort it must take to keep this district pristine. Nobles squandered their gift on whatever pointless aim they could think of, but they would never stoop so low as to use it for cleaning. No, that drudgery fell to the hollowborn. Indentured servant was the term floated by the elite, a fancy word for slave. The maelstrom's roar was constant here, so close to Eundis's citadel. Jord had claimed the denizens of the inner ring liked the noise, a reminder of their status. Only those fortunate enough could be subjected to the never-ending clash and whirl of water. The citadel loomed in the near distance. Even after all these years, Cal had never gotten a good look at the structure. Never had a reason to. The structure mirrored Igni's citadel, towering, light-swallowing walls of gray, straddling the enormous chain that speared into the violent waters below. 3 tramways connected it to the inner ring. The western tram, nearest to Cal and Quentin, ferried the social elite to galas. The southern and eastern ones hauled supplies and guards. The skin around Cal's chain scars twitched as he stared at the chain. He wrenched his gaze away with a grunt. Ugh, they should be here by now. Calm, my friend. Quentin yawned again. I have every confidence our friends are dandy and on their way. Jord knows what he's doing. And Shay. Oh, what a woman. A better mix of beauty and fury I've never seen. What I wouldn't give for some shadow time with her. Cal rolled his eyes. Aren't you meant to be with Jord? Quentin chuckled. Never hurts to keep one's options open. An eye on the market, so to speak. He winked. Cal's lip curled. Why are you so concerned? Got eyes on Jord, have you? Quentin prodded. No. Figures. From what he told me, the 2 of you used to be the fiercest of enemies in your younger days. Quentin leaped to his feet and sidled closer than Cal would have preferred. That was a long time ago. Cal shoved him back. Things change. People change. Sounds like quite the tale. Willing to share? No. Oh, please. We've no idea how long it will take the others to get here. How about a trade? You tell your experiences with Jord, and I'll tell you mine, Quentin said, cocking his eyebrows suggestively. Not interested. Quentin threw up his hands. Fine, I'll just have to make it up myself. He paced, finger tapping his chin. Once upon a time, there was a hollow-born boy named Cal, friendless, familyless, and oh so bitter. Cal did his best to ignore Quentin, something that proved impossible given Quentin's proximity. Now, here comes the hero of our tale, the dashing, the daring, the dangerously handsome Jord Tull. Quentin flourished like a street performer. Cal shifted, his jaw tightening. Now Jord, as kind as he was brave, took pity on lowly Cal and his orphan ilk. Cal jerked his head toward Quentin. His attention was now fully fixed on the would-be bard. Our hero extended a hand in generosity toward Cal, but he, of ill mind and iller temper, swatted that hand away. For you see, Cal and the members of his ghastly orphanage supped on only bile and contempt for their betters. Jealous they were of the... Cal snapped. He lunged at Quentin and slammed him into the wall, fingers crushing his throat. Quentin's smirk didn't waver. "What's the matter, King Hollow?" Quentin spluttered. "Did I hit a nerve?" Cal hurled him to the ground. "Cal!" George's voice rang down the alleyway. "What are you doing?" Coughing, Quentin allowed George to help him to his feet. He placed a hand on George's chest while his other rubbed his throat. "It's nothing, Jord. Don't worry. Cal and I were just getting to know one another better. The man behind the legend. This was just a little misunderstanding. Isn't that right, Cal?" Jord turned an angry gaze toward Cal, waiting for his response. "Right," snorted Cal. He focused his attention to Shay, ignoring the heat in his chest. "Find anything?" Shay eyed Quentin before answering. "Nothing much. All we learned was that the Citadel is holding a sort of gala in a few days." "A gala?" Quentin quipped. "In honor of what? Or whom?" "Who cares?" Shay replied. "Probably some snob who won the Best Little Follower award. Either way, not our target. What about you two?" Cal's tongue stuck to his dry mouth. His heat flickered, lighter now. "Cal here was able to abscond with a key to Lord Utikin's estate," Quentin supplied. "Cal, that's perfect. Where did you find it?" Shay asked. Cal looked down, avoiding Shay's gaze. She took his chin in her hands and raised it. "What's wrong?" "Took it from a hospice in the swell. A hospice run by Prissa." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "Wait, Prissa? The little girl from Leif's orphanage?" Shay asked, her eyes wide and searching Cal's. "Cal, are you okay?" A note attached to the key said this opens a back door. Prissa used it to come and go as she pleased. He tore his gaze away from Shay. Looking at her right now was too dangerous. She would see right through him. Jord cut in. "Well, that solves one problem. But we still don't know where to plant the evidence." "Isn't it obvious?" Quentin said. "We plant it in his personal chambers. Where else hides a man's deepest, darkest?" "Good point," Jord replied. "We don't have much time left. The sun will be up in less than an hour." He took the fake documents out of his jacket and handed them to Shay. "Do you think you can create an illusion for all four of us? Make us look like serving staff would suffice." Shay took the documents and flexed her branded hand. "Four? No. But I can manage two of us." She turned toward Cal and nodded. Cal took a second, but he nodded back in agreement.
Fine. Cal, you go with Shay. Watch her back,
George said, his voice still carrying his annoyance.
and no killing. Understand?
Cal didn't like the tone, but he nodded anyway.
Excellent. And while they are busy uprooting the life of one of the city's finest, I shall go and inform the prefects.
Quentin adjusted his neckline. Shouldn't be too difficult to convince him of Lord Utikin's rebel treachery. He winked at Cal again and set off before anyone could say anything to him.
Good luck, you two,
George said as Shay began casting her illusion over herself and Cal.
I'll be here if you need me.
Cal looked down at his new clothing. Shay's gift had conjured simple servants' clothing for them both, drab grays that leached both life and importance out of whoever wore them. He took one last look at the mansion ahead of him and then followed Shay into the shadows. Cal and Shay moved in unison, hoisting each other over the courtyard's outer wall. Years of sparring and running missions together had honed their teamwork, though for Cal, the rebellion was just a means to an end. Each successful mission brought him closer to killing the Lord Inquisitor. He'd cut through anyone, deal with any pain, bear any burden, as long as it meant reaching his goal. At least, that's what he told himself. His arm jerked as Shay pulled him behind one of the many garden hedges that ran across the courtyard. Her eyes searched his, urgency and concern warring in her gaze. Focus, she whispered. I know seeing Prissa again rattled you, but now is not the time for distractions. You can daydream later. Not daydreaming, Cal replied curtly. I'm fine. You trying to convince me or yourself? Cal clenched his jaw. Instead of answering, he studied the manor's lit windows, the occasional shadow passing behind drawn curtains. You're going to have to open up to someone eventually. You know that, right? Shay pressed, still keeping her voice to a whisper. Her words hit harder than he expected. They weren't just the perfect team. There was more to their relationship. They'd both had to do things they weren't proud of. There was a connection there, one that he'd tried to push away. Shay knew him better than anyone else at this point, and he knew her too. Like you said, this isn't the time, Cal muttered. Right now, all that matters is your rebellion living another day. Your rebellion, Shay echoed. That's what you always call it. The green hedge rustled as she leaned into it. Why have you stuck with us all this time, Cal? Why risk your neck for something you try so hard not to be a part of? Can we talk about this later? He scanned the visible entry points for the best approach. What happened to not being distracted? Shay exhaled, adjusting herself. Fine. We'll continue this later. I'm sure we will, Cal said, more to himself than to her. A door to the estate cellar swung open. A young woman wearing the same drab gray rags as Shay's illusion stumbled out, landing hard on the courtyard's gravel pathways. How many times have I told you not to go upstairs? An older woman loomed in the cellar doorway. Her stark white apron and sleeves rolled up to her elbows, the only thing separating her outfit from the young woman's. The lines in her brow told the story of a woman who'd long since abandoned any sort of motherly feelings. You've no business up there. I swear to the chains, I've had it up to here with you, Hollowborn. Sorry, madam, the young woman squeaked. I was just... You were just snooping around is what you were doing. The master's chambers are not for your kind. Yes, Mistress Mara, The young woman hung her head, her shoulders slumped forward. Latrines, now. And if I catch you or any of your dirty friends near those stairs again. Cal swallowed against a dry throat, reminded of another matron he'd once known whose bark was often scarier than her bite. The young woman scurried off into the gardens, likely to shed a few precious tears before returning to her grueling duties. Shay nudged Cal, flicking her chin toward the still open cellar door. With a quick jerk of her wrist, Shay's brand pulsed to life. Muted shadows danced along her arm and then across her body. They made staring directly at her difficult. Not impossible, as Cal knew where she was, but it was as if his brain wanted to trick him, tell him he wasn't staring at anything. Shay extended her arm, and similar shadows leaped to Cal, covering him just the same. He hated the feeling. Being encased in gift shadow felt like cheating. They slipped into the cellar, keeping low to the ground. The sharp, acrid smell of wine irritated Cal's nostrils. Rows of barrels stacked crisscrossed lined the walls, with patches of purple and reddish pink seeping into the stone beneath them. He shook his head against the heady scent, focusing on the stairs ahead. Cal grabbed Shay's hand and made his way through the space. Guards roamed the halls, yawning. Morning light had started to bleed through the windows, spreading across the manor's immaculately glossed wooden flooring. Shay's illusion would help them move through the interior's decreasing shadows, but it wouldn't be much use in direct sunlight. Cal waited as two guards stopped directly in front of a stairwell leading up. They grumbled about the long, boring hours they'd been on shift and inquired about each other's family life. Cal looked around at the other corridors, trying to discern some other infiltration path. But he couldn't. Each corridor looked the same to him. Paintings of women, fruit, ships, and all manner of pointless objects hung on wood panel walls. Vanity cabinets filled with trinkets, bookshelves lined with ornaments that glinted with the growing morning light, and expensive waist-high vases that decorated either side. Cal gritted his teeth. There was no time for another approach. This was the path. They're in the way, he whispered. Ideas? Shay braced against the opposite wall, sweat beading her brow. Her brand flared again. Neither of the guards panicked as darkness crept over their eyes. Cal shuddered, remembering a time he'd been curious enough to ask Shay to use the same illusion on him. She'd illusioned Cal's scarred arm to be healed. Everything had remained the same, but it had seemed so real to him at the time. Not just how his arm looked, but how it felt. How he had felt. Shay had tried, in her own way, to give him a moment of peace, but it hadn't ended well. Even now, shame at how he'd reacted crept through him, a memory he'd sooner tried to forget. The guards continued their conversation, oblivious. Cal crept past Shay close behind. At the top, she gasped, bracing against the wall. Drop the shadows, Cal whispered. The disguises are enough from here. I'm good, she said after a few seconds. Just need to catch my breath. Cal put his own hand on her shoulder, felt her tremble as she breathed. We can move without them. But keep the servant disguise. We don't need shadows as well. It's too much. Cal didn't like the idea of being spotted, even while wearing servant's clothes, but he liked the idea of their disguises dropping unexpectedly even less. We'll be fine, he said, sounding confident. We got this. Shay nodded and closed her eyes for a second. She breathed a sigh of relief as the shadow around her dropped, the blur of her outline disappearing. Better? Cal asked. Much, Shay said curtly, walking her hand up the wall as she stood. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Finding the master bedroom would be the next challenge. Even after his years of friendship with Jord, Cal had spent little time in buildings such as this. He preferred to avoid them if he could. They reminded him too much of what he'd grown up without, and how bad it had felt to lose it all, despite it being nothing in comparison to someone who lived like this. He fought the urge to sneak as he and Shay wandered the halls inside the manor, as feigning a servant's humility would get them further. He dipped his head as he passed a guard. "Oi, you there!" the guard called out. "Didn't know your kind were allowed up here." His accent was thick, probably low-born himself. The glowing brand on his hand told Cal everything he needed to know about how loyal to the system this man was. Uh, we're not usually," Shay stammered, adopting her own accent and meek posture. "Mistress Mara sent us to tend to Master Udican's chambers, but we're lost, sir." The guard eyed Shay for a second, passing his discerning gaze over to Cal. He resisted the urge to throw a punch, to knock the guard out and make a break for it. Doing so wouldn't help. This was Shay's domain. Performance was her thing. All he had to do was keep his mouth shut and follow along. The guard sighed, the stiffness in his posture slackening. "I understand," he said, his tone surprisingly gentler than a few seconds earlier. "Lord Huracan is a busy man. It wouldn't do for a man of his station to worry about garments for the upcoming gala. This way." He spun on the spot and walked in the opposite direction. Shay winked at Cal and followed the guard. "In here." The guard stopped outside a plain-looking door, plain being the only word to describe an intricately inlaid wooden door that sat in a corridor of equal lavishness. "Do what you need to do and then get back downstairs. No loitering, all right?" The guard didn't wait for a response. He turned on his heel and walked away. Shay entered first. She kept her back straight, but not too straight. She was supposed to be playing a serving girl, after all. "Hello? Lord Udican, sir?" she called out, loud enough for her voice to fill the room and the adjoining one beyond. When one responded to Shay's call, she breathed a small sigh of relief. Cal scanned the room for anything that might look like it contained secret or personal items. It was the first time he and Shay had been on a mission like this. Normally, they'd be here to steal something or do something that would make other members of the rebellion pause. That was the real difference between Cal and other people. He was willing to make the hard choices, do things that would keep others up at night. People wanted freedom, but they wanted it for free. They weren't always willing to do the dirty work. People always. "Cal!" Shay seethed. Cal snapped out of his daydream, admonishing himself for letting his mind wander again. "The door!" Shay grabbed Cal and pulled him into the adjoining room just as the chamber door opened. The tips of his fingers tingling as they slipped under the bed, the thump of his heart echoing in his ears. He'd gotten distracted twice now. Confident footsteps walked directly into the adjoining bedroom. A pair of well-worn boots of fine leather, specked with dust and dirt, stopped directly in front of where Cal hid. His body trembled with nervous anticipation. The boots turned and the mattress above him sagged. A long sigh of frustration filled the space, the sigh of a man exhausted from whatever burden he bore. Another figure appeared in the doorway, along with the hemline of a dress and apron similar to that of the elderly maid Cal and Shay had seen berating the young Hollowborn girl. "How long will you be staying, my lord?" Miss Mara asked. "Not long," a tired voice replied. "I'm here for a change of clothing, and that's it. My holdings in Valewind have come under scrutiny. No doubt another one of the Select Council's means of tarnishing my reputation. I shall be gone from the city for some time. Can I trust my estate to your care? Of course, my lord. The elderly maid dipped with a slight curtsy and turned to leave the room. Ah, Miss Mara, one more thing. Has there been any word, any change in his behavior? It took Miss Mara a few seconds to answer, her dress swaying from side to side as she shifted in the spot. I'm afraid not. I see. To think a mind as sharp as his would become so. Lord Udican sighed again, the bed frame sagging a little lower. Rissa will be disappointed. You do all you can, my lord. Thank you, Miss Mara. It's just a shame it's not enough. Lord Udican stood, the bed frame creaking as it returned to its normal state. Send supplies to our colleagues in Igni. Make sure he's well taken care of. Of course, my lord. Miss Mara curtsied once more and made her way out of the room. Cal clenched his teeth, pushing away his curiosity, refused to let himself get distracted a third time. Papers shuffled as Lord Udican searched for something at his desk. He muttered to himself and left the room, sighing as he did. Cal and Shay scooched their way out from under the bed and crept toward the open desk drawer. It was as good a place as any to plant the false evidence. Cal handed the documents to Shay and turned toward the doorway, watching for any sign of movement, any shifting shadow in the next room, his palms sweaty. Shay gasped from behind him. As Cal turned, she stuffed what looked like 2 documents into her jacket. What are they? Cal asked, keeping his voice to a whisper. Later, Shay answered back. Are we clear? Cal held her gaze for a moment, unease washing over him. He turned back to the doorway and poked his head out just enough to get a full view of a now empty room. He's gone, Cal whispered. Let's move. Right. Step by tentative step, they moved through the hallway, trying to gauge distance from the voices heard throughout the estate. Sunlight beamed through the windows in the hallway, the morning starting in full. How are you holding up? Cal asked. What? I'm fine, Shay replied, clearly surprised that Cal was asking. Think you can hold these disguises for a little longer? Of course. Indignation played across her face as she responded. Just follow me, and no more daydreaming. Cal ignored the comment. His question had wounded Shay's pride, and biting back when she felt cornered was very much her style. What's on those documents? Why did you take them? He asked again. Now is not the right time, she replied. Shay froze, staring right ahead. Cal followed her gaze, his pulse spiking as Miss Mara turned the corner at the end of the hallway. He grabbed Shay's arm and pulled her into the nearest room, grateful the door gave way. Who's there? Miss Mara called out as Cal shut the door. Come out right now. Lord Udican will have your hide if I find you snooping. Cal's hand flew to his jagged blade. Shay grabbed his wrist, her fingers digging into his chain scar. No killing, remember? Then what do we do? He hissed back. His skin prickled with heat, not just from his reflex for violence, but that a stiff-backed matron could rattle him so much. Shay locked eyes with him. Kiss me. What? Cal replied. No! Are you insane? Shay yanked him in. He resisted at first, but soon found himself leaning into soft lips and a familiar scent. Not her floral perfume, just her. His resolve wavered, and for a heartbeat, the mission vanished. The door to the guest room crashed open. What in the bleeding pits do you think you two are doing? Miss Mara's shriek tore them apart. Sorry, Miss Mara. Shay ducked her head, jabbing Cal in the side. Yeah, sorry, he muttered, mimicking Shay and avoiding the matron's flame-red face. I ought to have you both thrown out into the street. Get out of here, both of you! Shay dragged Cal past a seething Miss Mara. The taste of her, salt and forgotten warmth, lingered on his lips. He'd been the one to end things between them, and yet his chest ached for the comfort they'd once provided each other. Shay had been lonely, and if that kiss was any indication, then that loneliness hadn't changed. But she didn't want him, just someone to stitch that loneliness shut. And him? The closer they'd gotten, the clearer it had become. He was undeserving, a liar, a thief, a killer. He'd failed everyone who'd ever shown him love. Shay deserved someone far better. Shay dropped her illusion as they rejoined Jord. Her shoulders sagged and her brand flickered out, the strain of constant channeling leaving her. Cal caught her arm as she stumbled, steadying her until she waved him off. At the alley's mouth, Jord leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His fingers drummed against his bicep, gaze darting back and forth up the street. Quentin was nowhere in sight. He's not back? Cal asked, scanning the empty alley.
Does it look like it?
George snapped, sighing just as suddenly, his annoyance giving way to guilt.
Sorry. It should be taking him this long.
He probably just got distracted by something pretty, Shay said, patting George's shoulder as she passed.
Let's hope so.
George rubbed his temples.
How'd it go on your end? Any complications?
None, Shay replied, staring straight ahead and not at Cal.
Good, good. We'll head back to Dredge as soon as Quentin...
Are my ears burning? Quentin's voice rang through the alley as he swaggered into view, arms spread wide in triumph. Or is someone gorgeous saying my name? He grinned. Apologies for the delay. Our ever-vigilant prefects required extra persuasion.
Glad you're back,
George said, calm on the surface, but his tapping fingers betrayed him.
Did they take the bait?
Of course, Quentin winked. Now all that's left is for that ghastly piece of paper to be found. Assuming you two succeeded? He directed the comment toward Cal, but it was Shay who answered. We did. Excellent. Neither Quentin's smile nor gaze wavered. Like a match made in mischievous heaven, huh? Quentin, Shay interjected. Shut up. The words were clipped with frustration and aimed, Cal suspected, at him. Quentin raised his hands in mock surrender, his expression equally performative, though not before giving Cal a sly wink. We'd better get moving, Shay continued, eyeing the street. Getting back to Dredge's hideout won't be easy, not with morning patrols. Call me optimistic, but I do not believe random prefect patrols are going to be much of a problem. Quentin's smirk widened as he pointed toward Utican's estate. As if on cue, a band of 6 prefects, their blue-silver armor reflecting the morning light, marched in the estate's courtyard, shoving servants, both gray-clad and finely dressed, to the ground. Their captain hammered on the front door, bellowing for Lord Utican. That, I believe, is our cue to leave, Quentin said.
Agreed.
Cal's gut twisted as the prefects forced their way inside. He cast one last look at the estate before following the others into the shadows of the alley. Now, I'm curious. What do you guys think? Have we met Lord Utican before? Or is this our first time meeting Lord Utican? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? I think there's a decent chance that we have met Lord Udican before. I was actually wondering if it might have been Leif, but I guess we just don't know. Or is Leif the one that they couldn't, his mind had broken or whatever? Of course, I didn't know that till halfway through that chapter. I imagine as the book continues, we will find out more. And the book will continue right now with 17. Re entering the waterway to Dredge's hideout proved easier than expected. No one gave the group a second look, too occupied with gossiping about the latest scandal, Lord Udican's arrest. Back in the waterway, Shay grabbed hold of Cal's arm, waiting until Jord and Quentin were out of earshot before speaking. Cal, there's something you should know, she said, her tone serious. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a folded letter, and handed it to him. Cal eyed her grim expression urging caution as he accepted it. He scanned the letter, skimming over its finer points until a name gave him pause. His attention jerked from the letter to Shay. Her eyes were locked on the floor, sensing the weight of what he'd just read. Cal returned to the letter and read it in full. Lord Udican, the people of the Embers cannot thank you enough. The eruption took so much from all of us, but with your help, we have started to rebuild. Many lives were lost that day, each of them a friend. If there is ever anything a humble tavern master such as myself can do for you, then please say the word. I'm at your disposal. Dural Bagson. P.S. You needn't worry about Leif. His condition is stable. I will make sure he is taken good care of. Cal stared at the letter, his mind numb, fingertips tingling. After a long moment, he handed it back to Shay. He's alive, Cal. Her voice was quiet and deliberate. Leif is alive. She took the letter but didn't move closer. Cal was too stunned to speak. He'd never dared hope that anyone from his past had survived. Artie had looked into the matter for him, but the initial reports had been bleak. Everyone had been told the Embers was gone, that half of Igni had been erased. But some of it had survived. Some of his old life had survived. A wave of nausea washed over him. His chain scarf pulsed as he sagged against the wall, knees too weak to hold him. What do you want to do? Shay crouched beside him. Do? His voice was barely a whisper. Yeah. Do you want to go back? To Igni? There's no one would blame you for leaving, Cal. He paused, imagined returning to the Embers, embracing Leif, and rebuilding his life. Rebuilding the orphanage, the chaos, and the warmth that it had once held. For the briefest moment, he saw himself taking Leif's place, teaching, guiding a new generation of littles, just as Prissa was trying to do. But then the guilt stabbed through him, sharp as any blade. He couldn't go back. He couldn't become what Leif was, what Prissa had tried to be before he dragged her back into his mess. No, he was a poison. The last few hours had proved that much. I can't go back, he said, pushing himself off the wall. Why not? Shay asked. I'm not who I was then. Leif is better off without me in his life. You don't know that. Don't I? Cal snapped. Think about what we just did, Shay. What I just did. We finally hear of a Uden who's willing to stand up to the Davins, to actually help people. And what do? We frame him just so we can survive a few more days. Shay hung her head. His words were cruel, but true. We're supposed to be protecting people, not throwing them into danger just so we can make a deal with scum like Dredge. You think I don't know that? Shade's voice trembled as she glared at him, her frustrations boiling over. You think I'm proud of what we're doing? Of what we tell ourselves we have to do? The warble in her voice betrayed how close she was to breaking. You act like you're the only one with a right to be angry. Well, you're not. What exactly do you have to be angry about? Cal knew he shouldn't push. He knew he was wrong, but he didn't care. You, Cal, I have you. Shay didn't back down as he loomed over her. Years of brooding and pushing people away. Pushing me away. You blame yourself for something that you couldn't have stopped. You're not the only one who feels guilty. Watch it, he growled. No, she barked back, unshaken by his rising anger. I'm done babying you. I'm done with your self-pity. You hide behind your guilt because it's easier than facing the truth. You're just a coward who wants everyone to feel sorry for him. Her face was flushed, tears streaming down her cheeks. Fuck you! She shoved him hard in the chest. Cal's muscles tensed, his palms slick with sweat. The old fury that had kept him going for so long rose, but the words wouldn't come. He was too tired to fight with her, too tired to be this person anymore. Jord appeared from around the corner, Quentin close behind.
I heard shouting,
Jord said, concern etching his face.
Is everything?
His voice trailed off as he took in Shay's puffy eyes and Cal's rigid stance. Cal exhaled sharply, dropping his head before meeting Jord's gaze. We're fine. Just. He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Pushing past Jord and Quentin, he avoided their eyes and strode down the corridor. His footsteps echoed against the waterway's dark stone, the dull thuds mingling with the squelch of sludge underfoot. He walked until he was alone, or at least far enough to pretend he was. Cal stood silently beside the group, shame coiled around his chest like a snake squeezing the life out of its prey. In front of him, Dredge waffled on about partnerships and the benefits of understanding good business. But Cal didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to rest, to sit in his room at the hideout with his thoughts and whatever bottle he could get his hands on. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was a coward. He shook his head, huffing as helplessness crept in. Am I disturbing you, Chainbreaker? Dredge's voice sliced through the courtyard, all attention now on Cal. Only Shay refused to glance his way. Cal had hurt her, had been hurting her for a while. She had every right to be angry with him. The realization sat like a stone in his gut. No response? Dredge tutted. Then kindly keep your huffing to yourself. The adults are discussing the survival of your little rebellion. Cal bit back his retort. Instead, he nodded and slumped onto a nearby table, content to be as unimportant to the conversation as possible. Now, where were we? Dredge said, turning his attention back to Jord.
Our weapons.
Ah, yes. Dredge's smile curled even further. I took the liberty of delivering several crates to your hideout already. I even threw in a few of the prefect's gift dampening collars for good measure. He jabbed a finger toward the crucified fingers above. You never know when you might need to subdue a dangerous foe. Jord bowed.
We appreciate your cooperation. These weapons will ensure the rebellion continues to have a fighting chance.
This has been delightful, Dredge said. But now that our business is concluded, I must ask that you leave my little kingdom. I hear a seat has just opened up on the Select Council. Cal's chest sank. By now, Lord Udican was likely holed up in some cell, being tortured for information he didn't possess.
Then we shall take our leave,
George said, inclining his head. Wait, Shay said, stepping forward, arms folded across her chest. You said the weapons were delivered to our hideout. How did you know where to find it? Dredge's ever-present smirk curled. Cal's hand shifted to the hilt of his dagger. A scan of the parapets above showed only crucified bodies. No guards. No crossbows. Something was wrong. Darla's expression caught his eye. Her snarl, the twitch of her arms. All signs of pent-up violence looking for, pleading for, release. But that wasn't what set Cal's teeth on edge. Cal clapped his hands, walking toward the group. Cal's fingers clasped tight around the dagger's hilt. One wrong move from Dredge, and he would strike. Oh, you, my dear, are shrewder than your beauty lets on, Dredge purred, inches from Shay. It would be easy for Cal to let his dagger fly, but Dredge wasn't the threat. His chain scar pulsed, a dull ache spreading through his fatigued muscles. He gripped the old wound with his free hand, pressed his fingers into the scarred flesh in an attempt to loosen the ache. It's my business to know all that happens within the walls of our fine city. The comings and goings of both ally and enemy alike, Dredge continued. And which are we? Shay asked. Dredge clutched his chest in mock offense. Why, friends, of course. You have given my back a significant scratch. It's only right that I do the same for you. You can trust me. Shay's eyes twitched as she glared at Dredge. Speaking of friends. Dredge turned to Cal, ignoring the dagger in his hand. I have a question for my new favorite. Tell me, boy, who were your parents? The question caught Cal off guard. His chain scarf flared. Don't know, he gritted out. Raised in an orphanage, remember? No knowledge of who they might have been. Cal shook his head. Curious. Pray tell me, who ran this den of darling miscreants? What's it to you? Cal replied. Mentioning Leif or the orphanage to someone like Dredge would be a betrayal. Dredge smiled. Mere curiosity is all. Just two friends getting to know one another better. His gaze dropped, and he nodded toward Cal's white-knuckled grip on his forearm. Trouble? None of yours? Suit yourself. Dredge shrugged and sauntered back to his seat. After a heavy silence, Jord bowed again and led the group back toward the waterway. Quentin followed Jord, smirking his annoying smirk. Shay spun away, not looking at Cal as she passed. Cal sighed and joined his cohorts. The deeper they walked into the tunnel, the more intense the pain became. What had started as a dull ache now felt like a white-hot needle slicing its way through his muscles. He groaned, bracing himself against the filthy wall as the pain reached his shoulder. Cal. Shay spun on the spot, any trace of her frustration with him absent. What's wrong? The scar. I think. Ugh! The memory hit him. The same pain had happened years ago, on a mission he and Shay had barely escaped from. Cal forced himself upright, breathing hard. Shay, they're here. He stood in the center of the tunnel and drew both blades. Shay fell beside him, her dagger ready, her brand glowing.
What are you doing?
Jord asked. Confusion spread clear across his face.
Who is here?
Shay turned back to Jord, her voice hard as steel. Inquisitors. And that was chapter 17. Oh no, oh no, oh no! Oh yeah! Inquisitors. I think there's going to be a fight. And so let's dive right in to the fight, shall we? As we start, 18. Two figures emerge from the tunnel's darkness, their black armor swallowing the dim light save for where the golden spires were embossed on their breastplates. Four nervous prefects trailed behind, swords drawn, brands glowing. Cal exhaled, centering himself. He lowered himself into a combat stance and drew both of his blades. Give me some cover. He didn't wait for Shay. Like a spring trap, he launched forward. At the last second, he planted his foot on the ground, pivoted to the side, and slashed down hard with both blades. The first Inquisitor parried with inhuman speed. Cal's arms shuddered as the blades locked into place. The second Inquisitor reared to strike Cal's open side, but a veil of shadows slammed into his helmet before it could complete its swing. The darkness writhed, strangling the creature's vision as it clawed at its faceplate. Shay appeared at Cal's flank and drove her boot into the gut of the first Inquisitor, sending it sprawling. Not wasting a second, Cal pounced. His jagged blade and dagger slid through the Inquisitor's obsidian armor like it was parchment. They sank deep into flesh, releasing a stench of rot and cloying sweetness. Nearby, Shay drove her dagger up through the second Inquisitor's throat as the roiling shadows faded. She grunted as she yanked her blade free, her footing giving way beneath her. The brand on the back of her hand throbbed, then dimmed. Jord, take her! Cal barked as he hauled Shay back. The nervous prefects edged forward, their boots scuffing over the fallen Inquisitors, the last one taking more time than the others. Cal rushed to engage the lead prefect, hurling his dagger into the second's shoulder. The wounded prefect spun, firing a wild gout of gift fire into the ceiling, causing rubble to rain down. A sizable chunk smashed into Cal's already aching shoulder, and panic spiked in his chest as he locked blades with his opponent, the impact coming close to buckling his arms. Heat erupted behind Cal as another blast of gift fire engulfed the remaining two prefects. Their screams echoed as their melting armor cooked them alive. Cal gritted his teeth as the lead sword inched closer to his face. The second prefect regained his composure and lunged, his sword arm held back, readying for a thrust. At the last second, Cal wrenched the jagged blade free and sidestepped. The thrust meant for him impaled the lead prefect instead. Pushing off the wall, Cal shoulder barged the dying man into his comrade, driving the blade deeper. The momentum slammed all three of them into the wall, and Cal's shoulder popped with a sickening crack as he hit the ground. The surviving prefect swatted at falling dust and stone, just as another gout of gift fire plumed from the opposite end of the tunnel, where Quentin was standing with his hands outstretched. Pushing through the pain, his right arm limp at his side, Cal surged up and buried his jagged blade in the prefect's throat. Quentin lowered his hands, and Jord retrieved Cal's dagger before hauling him to his feet.
Your shoulder, Jord panted. It
Cal rammed his shoulder into the nearby wall. The joint crunched back into place with a yelp inducing snap. He slumped to the floor, clutching his shoulder, and glared at Shay. Get them moving. Now! Jord blanched.
What? They're dead. We should take a moment to rest and.
A wet gurgle cut him off, and his expression morphed into abject terror. The fallen Inquisitors' bodies jerked and spasmed on the ground, black sludge bubbling from their wounds. Cal's chain scar burned as both Inquisitors lurched to their feet. Run! Cal screamed, his voice breaking through Jord's stunned silence. Jord and Quentin dragged an exhausted Shay past the monstrosities. Cal sucked in a breath, basked in the adrenaline flooding his veins, and charged the nearest Inquisitor. His slash took its legs out, and he ducked beneath the clumsy swing of the second that was still coming to its feet.
How do we kill them?
George screamed, stumbling slightly as he dared to look back. I don't know, Cal yelled back. His right arm throbbed as he sprinted in the direction of his allies, each step threatening to dislodge his shoulder once more. Gift fire hurtled past him. It detonated against the wall directly ahead, pelting Cal with shrapnel. He barreled through, his left arm raised to shield his face. Heat raced up his spine as another fireball arced directly toward his companions. Cal threw himself into the ball's path, swiping at it with the jagged blade. The deflected gift careened to the side, vaporizing part of the wall, the concussive force hurling him to the ground. Cal! Shay tore free from Quentin's grasp and sprinted back to Cal. Shay! The walls! Cal coughed, spitting out a glob of blood that left a metallic taste in his mouth. Bring them down! Jord! Do it! Twin streams of gift trailed up Jord's arm, merging into a vibrant ball in his palm. The air around him thumped, and his arm jerked back as he shot the ball of fire into the ceiling just beyond Cal and Shay. Cal threw his body over Shay as the blast sheared through the tunnel's supports. The ceiling collapsed in a thunderous roar, sending up a spray of dust and dirt.
Cal! Shay! Are you all right?
Jord called through the din filling the tunnel. Here! Shay coughed, sending the dust swirling away from her and Cal. Cal groaned. An ache throbbed through his busted shoulder, spreading down into his arm. He tried to move his fingers, but the effort only shot pain through him. It could be fixed later. For now, he had more pressing matters to deal with. He pushed himself off Shay, collapsing again the second he managed to stand. His head spun, and he fought the urge to vomit, the jolting ache his retching caused being the only thing that stopped him.
By the flames, Cal! Are you all right?
George said as he came to Cal's side. Never better. Cal regretted speaking as grit and dust coated his tongue. The subsequent coughing felt like a knife twisting in his ribs. Shay and Jord lifted Cal to his feet, looping his arms over their shoulders.
How in Igny's breath did they find us?
Jord asked, his voice on the verge of breaking into sheer panic.
And how can Cal sense them?
Dredge must have sold us out. Seems his speech about reputation and trust was nothing more than a ruse. Quentin mused, wiping his golden bracelets with his shirt sleeve before clicking them back into place, unruffled by the tunnel's echoing rumbles. Cal focused on Quentin's swaying form. Thanks. The effort drained what little energy he had left. Quentin's smirk faltered, just for a heartbeat. Think nothing of it. I'm sure you would do the same for me if you were able. Cal freed himself of Jord and Shay, swaying but upright. I'm okay. I can stand. His body still felt as though it weighed 3 times as much as usual, and the feeling in his limbs was a mix of fatigue and pain. but at least he could still feel something. Pain was good. It let him know he was still alive. Take it slow. Shay held her arm outstretched, ready to grab him again if he faltered. Shay, Cal rasped, his voice still raw. If they found us here. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched. The hideout. The words tore from her throat as she whirled and launched herself down the tunnel, boots pounding against stone, until she was swallowed by the darkness. Cal clambered up the stairwell that led back into the city streets, shoulder throbbing with each step. Morning light poured through the doorway ahead. He braced himself against the rusted frame, ignoring the smell, and scanned the crowd for any sign of Shay. People screamed as they ran, trampling over each other. No Shay. No clues in the overturned carts or collapsed stalls. Cal shoved off the doorframe and into the streets. A terrified worker slammed into him. He barely broke stride, just twisted to see the man stammer an apology before continuing his panicked escape. The ache throbbed through Cal's shoulder as Jord hooked an arm under him.
Don't push yourself, Cal. You're not invincible.
Jord's eyes widened as he looked past Cal. Cal followed his gaze. The pain in his shoulder vanished, his fatigue dissolved. Only his chain scar burned, pulsing as he stared at the column of black smoke rising in the near distance. Shay, Cal uttered. Ice tendrilled down his spine, and his muscles twitched with nervous energy. Images of his home on fire flashed through his mind. It was happening again. Cal broke into a sprint, defying the scream of his body. Shay was there. He had to move. Corpses littered the hideout's now not so secret entrance. Black smoke curled from their blistered skin. Blood oozed from gouges in their sides. The metal door lay in tatters, ripped off its hinges. Whatever did this hadn't met resistance, just slaughter. Jord and Quentin caught up, both panting. Jord gasped at the sight of the rebel corpses, clapping his hand to his mouth, while Quentin just stared, his glibness gone. Cal lifted up charred limbs and rolled over blood-soaked bodies. Shay wasn't among the dead. He didn't wait for Jord or Quentin to say anything. He darted through the ruined metal door and headed in the direction of the hideout's war room. Signs of fighting marked the corridors. Rebels lay strewn across tables or slumped beneath cracked walls, their faces locked in final moments of pain and fear. Cal checked each body he came across with a passing glance, their lifeless expressions fueling both his relief and panic. The bodies of 3 prefects lay in the war room, shadows clinging to their eyes, blood dripping from precise neck wounds. Their deaths had been quick. Other corpses lined the room, wearing the drab garb of the rebellion's supporters. Each bore similar slash and scorch marks to their fallen allies at the entryway. Quentin paled as he entered the room. This was no mere raid. Cal breathed deep, tempering the heat in his chest. Then what was it? An extermination. An example, Quentin replied, his voice flat. The rebellion is a nuisance the Davins can no longer ignore. George stormed over to Quentin and shoved him in the chest.
Look at these people, Quentin! Look!
He pointed at the bodies littering the floor, his voice waning as he spoke.
They weren't nuisances. They were people. People who believed in what we're doing. People who died for it.
And they died for nothing, Quentin replied. The rebellion has changed, Jord. We don't fight for the people anymore. We fight for ourselves. The people don't see us as saviors. Quentin looked past Jord and stared directly at Cal. They don't see him as a savior.
Then what do they see us as?
Jord asked. Terrorists, Quentin replied, his voice deadpan and serious. Is that what you think? That I'm a terrorist? As long as you're with them, how can I not? Quentin dropped his head and turned away.
Then what does that make you, Quentin?
Jord tried to keep his voice firm, but grief pushed against his defenses. Quentin didn't respond. He hung his head and walked out of the room. Back in the direction they'd come. George swiped at the tears on his face with an indignant huff, as if to remind himself that this moment needed strength, not weakness. His lip quivered as he glared at the now empty doorway. Cal opened his mouth, but hesitated to speak. He knew that kind of bitterness all too well. Knew words would do little to ease the pain. A cry echoed down the stone corridor. Cal jerked his head in the direction of Barkis's private room. Faint sounds of fighting clanged and thumped in the distance. Someone was still alive. Cal grabbed hold of Jord's arm. Jord! Artie's workshop! Head there and see if there are any survivors. Jord looked in the opposite direction of the fighting, back toward the water channel that ran near the back of the hideout. He turned back to say something, but Cal cut him off with a raised hand. Please, Jord. Jord nodded and made his way in the direction of Artie's workshop. Cal watched him go, grimacing at the thought of what Jord was giving up. He massaged his aching forearm. The chain scar burned at the touch, flooding him with something cold and invasive. He blinked away the black spots crowding the edge of his vision and reached for his dagger. His shoulder buckled, sending a stabbing pain down his arm, like hundreds of needles prickling the tips of his fingers. He snarled, rolling the pain out of his shoulder. He didn't have time to worry about it. He'd fight with one arm if he had to. With a fortifying breath, he tightened his grip around the jagged blade's hilt and sprinted toward the fight. More dead rebels lay strewn across the corridor, their bodies cleaved open from shoulder to sternum. Cal's gut twisted at the sight. What kind of creature had such strength? As he hurried ahead, the sound of clashing swords fell silent, replaced by a guttural howl of pain. Dad, no! Shay's voice echoed down the corridor. The door to Barkis's room hung open. An acrid smell assaulted Cal's senses. His chain scar flared hotter the closer he got, but he ignored it, jagged blade steady in his hand. Barkis's room was Spartan, just a bed, a table, and a currently empty weapon rack. The man himself sat slumped against the bed, clutching a dark red stain in his jerkin, blood pouring between his root-thick fingers. Sweat gleamed across his cut-up face. For a man built like a siege engine, he looked seconds from collapse. A clang of steel snapped Cal's attention to the corner. Shay knelt on one knee, her dagger raised above her head, locked in a shuddering stalemate against an obsidian blade with blood dripping down its edge. Shay! Cal rushed forward and swung at the obsidian blade's wielder, a mass of black armor, the breastplate emblazoned with a golden spire, the faceplate pitiless. The Lord Inquisitor's hand. Cal's blood turned to ice. It had been years since anyone had seen this creature, most rebels believing it to be little more than a boogeyman. Cal knew better. He had a score to settle with this thing. They stared at each other down. No words, no taunts, just a drip of blood from the hand's blade. Where is your master? Cal said in a seething rage. Where is the Lord Inquisitor? Silence. Cal trembled. His vision tunneled. Fatigue burned away as something hot and hungry surged through his left arm. His muscles crackled with energy. Answer me! He lunged, jagged blade flashing. The hand flicked its wrist, loosing a bolt of gift fire. Cal smacked the blast away, rage fueling his reflexes. It quickened him, heightened his senses. It felt good, like breaking free. He swung hard to the right. The obsidian blade parried the blow, but Cal wrenched his momentum into a jab. The tip sang as it struck the flat side of the dark blade. No effect. The hand hadn't moved. Cal growled, attacking low this time. The obsidian blade came into his path once again, and Cal pushed his body into his swing. The two darkened blades screeched as they locked into a bind, jagged edge scraping against sharpened obsidian. Where is he? Spittle flew as Cal screamed. He barely recognized his own voice, or his own thoughts and actions. Cal's arms trembled, his vision frayed at the edges, the darkness seeping in. His rage made him strong, deadly, and pushed him to move beyond his limits. But he was losing control. With a snarl, he shoved the hand backwards. Not wasting a second, he twisted and slashed across the golden spire of the monster's breastplate. Metal split with a shriek. No blood welled from the gash, but Cal had struck flesh. He was sure of it. The hand regained its balance in an instant and grabbed Cal by the throat, lifting him off his feet. Cal kicked and clawed, his consciousness dipping as he fought for every breath. The wall cracked behind him as the hand slammed him into the stone. Then, light. A crack like thunder. A wet snap. Cold air rushed into Cal's lungs, burning them as he crashed to the ground, legs on fire. Shay whimpered as she sagged against the wall, her fingers still locked around the gift arm. The glow of her brand flickered like a dying candle while wisps of smoke curled from her weapon's scorched barrel. A hole gaped in the hand's chest plate, but it moved unperturbed toward Shay, sword raised for a killing strike. Cal, get up! The chain scar split open with a new agony. Beneath his skin, black ichor slithered like a living thing, pumping venom into his veins. His flesh darkened with sickly blotches, and the stench of rot thickened the air. His muscles coiled wire tight, his breathing more frantic, and beneath it all, a voice, a presence. It was ancient and hateful, a thing of claws and teeth that scraped at his mind. Cal! Shay's scream pierced through the fog. He latched onto her terror, brought himself back from the edge. With a raw howl, he flung himself forward, and the world vanished.
Hey, Cal, can you hear me? Come on, wake up.
Gentle tapping on his cheek pulled Cal from the dark. Artie leaned over him, vials of ointment strewn across the floor. Cal blinked, having no memory of hitting the ground. The last thing he recalled was Shay's shot, the crack of light, and then... Shay! He bolted upright, knocking over a vial. Artie flinched, then pressed a canteen into Cal's hands.
Shay's fine. Don't worry.
Where is she? Cal asked, his pulse thumping in his neck.
She's in her room. Said she needed to be alone after.
After what? Cal searched his friend's expression for the answer. Artie, what happened? Artie sighed, his shoulders slumping.
Arcus is dead, Cal. There was nothing we could do.
Cal launched to his feet, shrugging off Artie's attempts to hold him down.
Hey, you need rest.
Artie, I'm fine, Cal replied. It was true. No ache in his shoulder, no fatigue. The lingering pains in his body were gone. Marcus's room held a different story. The gift arm Shay had used lay shattered near Barkis's bed. The table had been smashed against the pockmarked wall, and black ichors smeared the floor, mixing with old blood. Cal's stomach lurched. He pushed past survivors mumbling farewells to fallen friends, while others moved the bodies that littered the rooms. This underground network of chambers and tunnels had once been something akin to a home. Now it stank of death and loss. A tomb. Shay stood with her back to her private room's door, a needle trembling in her fingers as she clumsily stitched a gash on her arm. "You don't have to look at me like that," she said, struggling to apply ointment without wincing. "This is nothing." Cal took the needle. "Here, let me." Her wound looked ugly, but it was shallow. He'd sewn up worse on his own skin. He worked without comment, noting the bruise purpling her cheekbone. Shay winced, balling her fists as he pulled the thread taut. "How did you manage to drive that thing off?" Cal asked, half distracting Shay, half placating his unease. "I didn't," she replied, turning her head away. "You did." "Me?" Cal's hands stilled. Shay didn't reply. Cal didn't push. He focused on the task at hand, making sure the binding was even, the wound clean. Another wash of ointment, and Cal was finished. As he reached for a bandage, he took note of Shay looking anywhere else but at him. "He give you the bruise, too?" "You, Shay angled her head away, trembling fingers touching her cheek. "He's not human, is he?" "Definitely not," Cal replied with a hollow chuckle. "I don't know what he is." Silence dragged between them, awkward, heavy. "He scares me," Shay said. Cal clipped the bandage secure, kept his hands clasped around her arm. "Me too." His heart thumped as he looked down at his chain scar, at the black veins that squirmed beneath the blotches under his skin. He flexed his fingers, hoping the motion might somehow push them away. "I'm sorry for what I said to you." Cal jerked his head up to meet Shay's gaze. She was staring right at him, her expression serious, but not marred with the callousness it had held in the tunnels before. "You're not a coward." Cal let out another joyless chuckle. "No, I think you might have been right about that one." He sank onto her bed, like he'd done many nights before, sitting alone with her. Only this time, the urge to flee was absent. "I'm the one who should be apologizing." Shay sat next to him, her shoulder brushing his. "I can't be what you want me to be, Shay. I just, I can't." "I know. Neither can I." She exhaled. "You're not the only one who's running away from themselves." "About Barkis? I'm..." Cal trailed off. What was there to say? Barkis had been a hero to the rebellion, a pillar of strength for them all to lean on. But to Cal, he'd just been another Hollowborn hater. Besides, what did someone like him have to offer in the way of comfort? "Don't." She pushed herself off the bed and handed him a thick, scented piece of paper. "We've got other problems to deal with." "What's this?" "Read it." He skimmed through the information. It was an invitation for Lord Udican to attend the matriarch's celebration day. "We can give the others a chance of getting out of the city." Her voice was stern and serious. Cal looked between Shay and the invitation, quickly coming to the same realization as her. Slip in, slip out before anyone notices us. "Not the first time we've done something we weren't proud of." The matriarch's gala was in a few days' time. No time to debate. No need for permission. He'd give what remained of the rebellion a chance to escape, a chance to regroup and come back stronger. He owed Barkus that much. He owed Shay that much. Cal strode back to the war room, Shay at his heels. Jord had gathered the survivors around the table, passing maps of Eunice's city rings between them, several key locations circled in smudged charcoal.
We need to get out of the city now,
Jord said, leaning on the table. No softness or diplomacy was left in his voice.
This hideout is no longer secure. Too many of the other cells have gone dark, and the Davins continue to increase their presence in these key locations. The only way out for it is for us to use a sewer network.
He stiffened, adjusting his collar.
And pray we don't get caught.
That won't work. Cal stepped forward. Dredge sold us out, remember? If you go down there, the best thing you can hope for is a quick death. Artie shifted beside Jord, sweat-glazed hair pushed back, soot streaking his cheeks, his leather armor pockmarked with fresh burns. He met Cal's gaze with a tired, grim smile. Behind him, several of his assistants stood hollow-eyed, some supporting the weight of others. Carell was absent from their number. Jord's usual neatness had unraveled. His shirt hung loose, his hair unkempt.
We can't stay here, Cal. You drove off the hand, but that thing will be back. Likely with reinforcements.
Murmurs rippled through the survivors.
Thing's unhuman,
someone muttered. Cal ignored them. You're right. You all need to leave the city. But you can't do that while the Davins are hunting you. You'll need something big to make them look the other way. He paced over to Jord, palmed Lord Utican's invitation into his hands, and watched Jord's eyes widen. The whispers died as Cal turned. Make no mistake, the Davins will spin this purge to their advantage, as justice. Quentin was right. The people don't cheer for us. They see us as terrorists. They fear us. He let that sink in. I say we use that fear.
How?
A rebel scoffed. Simple. Cal snatched the invitation from Jord and slammed it onto the table. I'm going to kill the matriarch. And that is the end of chapter 18 and the end of our read for this evening. I hope you guys have enjoyed this reading of Gyfted. If you missed any of the chapters as we went through, I will be putting them up onto the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening, starting in the next 10 minutes or so. So all of the chapters, the prelude, chapters 1 through 18, and the interlude that's in there, all will be available by the end of today on the YouTube channel for your listening enjoyment. Remember, share it with your friends. If you think they might enjoy it, free to listen to on the channel. We'd love it if you supported me by subscribing to the channel, or the author by purchasing his books, or reading it on Kindle Unlimited so we get some credit that way, but free for you to listen to on the YouTube channel. Thank you all. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or for 2.5 hours. Thank you so much for having been here with me. I will hope to see you guys again on Tuesday when I am back as we continue to read through more of Gyfted. Until then, have yourselves a wonderful weekend. And if you happen to be in the United States or anywhere that celebrates it, happy Veterans Day on Tuesday. Go give some love and support to a veteran, would you? We appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great night.